Welcome to Storytelling. This week's guest is a wills and trust specialist who is passionate about helping people protect what matters most and plan confidently for the future. After a successful 22-year senior career in a design and manufacturing industry, she followed her passion for helping others by moving into estate planning. Today she works with individuals and families, providing expert guidance on wills, trust, lasting powers of attorney and probate support, always making the process as straightforward and reassuring as possible. She believes estate planning is about modern paperwork, it's about protecting loved ones and giving families lasting peace of mind. Please welcome Maria Greenwood.
Hello, Maria, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Debbie.
Maria, after helping so many people with their wills over the years, what's the one thing you wish everyone understood before they even started thinking about writing or reviewing one?
Oh, I think everybody thinks that their estate is really simple. And most clients I see will tell me, oh, our estate's really simple, it's going to be a quick thing. But they do not consider the different scenarios that can happen in life. So spending time going through those, there's a real dawn of realisation about what can happen and what they would actually want to avoid.
So that realisation that you mentioned, when people come to you wanting to write a will, what do they think they're protecting and what, in your experience, are they actually protecting?
With any hope, they're protecting everyone they love and everything they own, but it does need to be written in the right way. They do need to think about the different scenarios that I would take them through to make sure what they have in their mind and in their hearts is actually going to happen.
If someone listening is thinking, I've already got a will, so I'm covered, what would you say to them?
I would say have a will review. Many people have wills. They might have written them 20 years ago. Things are out of date. People have died. Situations have changed. Marriages, remarriages, all those kind of things I need looking at on a regular basis. So with my clients, not only do we go through everything they need, even if they've got a will in place, we'll start from scratch to make sure they've considered every different scenario that can happen. But also on a yearly basis, we give them a call, get in touch and say, what's been going on in your life? I've got an example of that actually. I did a will for a lady who'd been a nurse for many years. She had lived in Canada. She moved back to the UK to care for her mother. Her mother then passed away, so she received her mum's estate. She told me at the time she was actually seeing a very, very rich chap, and he was quite keen on her. Anyway, I did her will in the UK to represent those assets to make sure they were going to go to her son in Canada. I also advised her to do a will in Canada to cover her assets there, so she did that. I rang her up 3 or 4 months later after we'd done all the planning just to check she'd got everything and she was fine. And I said, anything else happened in your life that I should know about? She said, oh, no, not really. Oh, but I did marry that guy. I said, you've got married since you did your will? She said, yeah. She said, but it doesn't change anything because everything's still going to my son. I said, no, it isn't. I said, because you've married him, that's now trumped your will and your estate is now going to your new husband. So I said, all we need to do is reprint your will. I'll come out, we'll re-sign it. And that means you've made that decision and dated it after you were married. So then it will be valid. And she's like, oh my God, I can't believe that. So there's a prime example of something that people just don't realise.
I think that really is a good example of something that people don't necessarily think about. Are there other common questions that your clients ask when you see them?
You get quite a lot of people saying, well, my daughter's married, but I can't abide my son-in-law, or I'm not too keen on him, or I don't trust him. That happens quite a lot. Most people will want things to go down the bloodline. So they will want it to go to their children and then on to their grandchildren. they wouldn't want what we call sideways disinheritance happening. So say, for instance, mother passes away and your father decides he's going to get remarried a few years later. Once he remarries, everything from the original estate, so your mum's estate as well, has passed to him. As soon as he remarries, that's then shared with his new spouse. If he then passes away without making any will provision, then everything would then pass to your stepmother. Now, what happens if she's got 6 children of her own? She's then got the whole of the estate. So your mum and dad's estate is sitting with her, and she can then choose to do whatever she wants to with that estate, and she could cut out the original children in the family. That's why it's important to get the right sort of planning in place.
And it's great that you've touched upon marriage and you've touched upon children. Are there other life events that should prompt someone to review their will?
So really, we should start off with a will as soon as we have any kind of asset. Now, an asset could be we're getting our first property, we've been left an inheritance, maybe grandma left us something, we've suddenly got a lot of money in the bank, or we've had a child. Really important to put in guardianship for children. People just assume, oh, if something happened to me, my mum would look after my child, or my sister, or my best friend. That's not the case, because effectively the social services and the courts would have to be involved because they don't know who you've chosen. They have to do their own due diligence. And while that happens, what happens if your child ends up in foster care because they haven't done their due diligence in time? So that's a really scary thing. But if you've thought about those things, thought about what should happen, chatted to family members and talked about who could look after your children, then that's a real important thing to put in place. So I'd say those are the main reasons for getting a will, just to make everything very simple for those that are left behind. And don't forget, if you pass away, with any luck, your family are going to be very emotional and upset and dealing with a very difficult time. So you need to make it easier for them, and a really good professionally drafted will setting out exactly what's going to happen just gives them a plan to follow. If you haven't got a will in place, it goes to what's called letters of administration, and that's when the government is involved, and there's a set way that they look at things, and the people that receive might not be the people you want to receive. So it's always better to have a will written that sets out your objectives.
I think that was a great example you gave about children, for example, and remembering what guardianship you want in place for them. Are there other common mistakes that people have made in the past? For example, not telling anyone where the will is kept, for example.
People do that all the time. So again, having a professionally drafted will put in place, especially with our company, we store the original will for you, so there is no fallout and wills can't be lost. So if somebody has a will and that's in the property, maybe they've written 5 wills during their lifetime, and maybe they've got all 5 wills stored in the property. Can you imagine if the executor goes in, reads number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and actually decides, oh, I like will number 4 better because that favours me, and just loses the rest of them? Whereas if it's professionally stored, that's never going to happen. So that's another really good reason to have professional storage. And the other thing, if you cannot find the original will, then that's again going to be an issue. If you can find a copy, again, there still might have to be a big insurance policy that's taken out to make sure that if the original turned up, that there's insurance in place if it said something completely different. But I can give you another really good example of somebody who really should have had a will. In October 2024, Liam Payne shocked fans around the world because he passed away. And the headlines took a really different turn, and it wasn't about music or memories, but money. That One Direction star died without a will. He left an estate of £24.3 million. And that was to be divided under the rules of intestacy, which means by the government. So his former partner, Cheryl Tweedy, and his music industry lawyer had been granted limited powers to manage his estate. Despite Cheryl being the mother of his child, she was not entitled to inherit. Not that Cheryl probably needs it, but the entire estate will pass to his son, Bear, but not until he turns 18 years old. I think he's about 10 at the moment. What I can't believe is that somebody so high profile as that, who probably had tax advisors and all sorts of people helping him, didn't have even a basic will in place to say what would happen. And I'm sure he may well have wanted to, with all of his estate, wanted to look after his parents, siblings, other family members, and not just leave it in such a mess. So that's a prime example of something going wrong.
Do you think some people think they're too young to have a will?
Yeah.
And do you think that's what maybe happened in Liam's case?
It could be, but I do think that he had a lot of advisors. And the first thing, if he had a financial advisor, the first thing a financial advisor will say is, have you got a will in place? Because you've amassed all this fortune, but if you haven't got a will in place, it's not going to go where you necessarily want it to. And secondly, they'll ask if you've got lasting powers of attorney in place, which are the documents that look after you before you die, but if you lose capacity. So yeah, people do think they might be too young for a will, but as I said before, if you've got an asset, so whether that be you've started on the property ladder, you've had an inheritance, or you've got a child or children, you should always have a will in place.
So without mentioning names of your specific clients, do you think you can share an example where reviewing a will made a real difference to a family?
So I've done planning for a father who had to buy out a house for his married daughter, but unfortunately her husband was a drug addict. They were in the middle of divorce, but he wanted to protect the assets. So we managed to do a specific type of will with a trust in it, which means the asset will be for his daughter because he had to buy it out, but it's out of his estate for inheritance tax purposes. So he's going to save himself a lot of tax. I've had a lady whose partner lives with her, but he has no assets. So she's got the house, she's got all the money, he just lives with her. And she wanted to keep a roof over his head, but she felt it was unlikely he'd be able to afford the bills on his own. So I put in planning that would give him a roof over his head until he passes away, but her children will not lose out. And that lady had been worrying for months and months and months, and actually cried during the appointment because she just didn't know what to do. So again, sometimes it's about bringing relief to people. Do you have a lot of pet lovers out there? Another example. So people that don't have children often go a bit crazy on their pets. So I did a will for a couple who adore their dog so much. If something happened to them, and that little dog would be rehomed by a charity, but there's a secret twist to this one. So whoever goes to that charity and takes that dog on for the rest of its life will get a surprise of around £30,000 to look after the dog. But they won't know until they've said, yes, we'd like to look after that dog. So yeah, you get all sorts of different scenarios come up that people want to protect against. You also get people that are very vulnerable. So you can have, say, a child that is, maybe you've got 3 children and one is vulnerable. So we have to put a trust in place to make sure that child is looked after for the rest of their lives, but their money is held in trust. And perhaps the other 2 children might be the trustees, and to make sure that child is cared for and they have the best of everything. Their trust fund is controlled by the children. Then should something happen, the rest of that trust fund can go back to the other children. So that's one I've done recently as well.
People often hear the word trust and assume it's only for wealthy families. Is that actually true? What is a trust fund?
So a trust is a mechanism that gives you a lot more control over where your assets go and how they are used after you've passed away. It can be set up whilst you're alive, There's also a different type that can be set when you've passed away. And it just gives a lot more control and protection for the assets that are left. And it's really to stop what we call sideways disinheritance. So it stops, say, a husband and wife in the scenario I said before, where if, say, the husband died and the wife remarried, it means that the husband's assets can be used by the wife until her death. But if she does go and marry someone 20 years younger down the gym, he can only benefit from her half of the estate, not the husband's half. The wife can use it, but then when the wife passes away, whatever was in the husband's half can go down to the children. So it doesn't go outside of their family. Again, if somebody passed away early, so say you've got a husband and wife and they've got 3 children and they've left the estate to the 3 children, but all 3 children are married, and then say one of them passed away, it means that the estate would go to the child of their child, so their grandchild. It wouldn't pass to the spouse of their child, so that it follows the bloodline effectively. It can also protect against generational inheritance tax, and that's another big one. Most people don't want to pay inheritance tax, so you can make sure that your legacy is something that passes from generation to generation. So that's an important thing as well. So you can actually save tax once it's passed to the second generation. So there's lots of things that we explore with clients about what they may or may not want to do and why they would want to do that.
It's a trust for everyone, because I think for me, it sounds like a great and fantastic idea, particularly if you want to protect your children and your children's children.
There are many different types of trusts, and it's not for everybody. So somebody starting out in life that's just literally getting their first home isn't going to need a trust fund. They're just going to need a basic will. And that's why reviews are important, because there's so many different situations where a trust will be of help. So I'll give you another example. I had some elderly clients who, again, 3 children. They said, we love all of our children dearly. Our 2 eldest children, completely sensible, getting on with their lives, financially secure. But our youngest daughter has married, they called him a feckless musician. That was their terminology. And they said, this chap is nice enough, but money just goes through his fingers. So when our daughter has her inheritance, we know that he might try and persuade her to spend it on some crazy business venture or whatever his latest fad is. So what they did was they made their 2 elder children the trustees, and they can reason out what the money would be used for and as to whether they're going to pass the share out to the daughter as and when. So she's entitled to it, but they're just going to make sure the money is being used for sensible purposes. Again, it might be, say, for instance, you've got a child who's got a drug problem or a gambling issue. The last thing you would do is leave them a massive amount of money, because they may gamble it away or use it for drugs. But if you leave that in the care of trustees, they can make the decision to say, well, look, we're going to pay your rent every month. We're going to pay for your shopping delivery so you've got food on the table, pay your bills, all that kind of thing, and give them some spending money, but make sure the whole lot isn't frittered on something that the parents wouldn't have wanted. So that's the control you can put in with a trust. Also, another thing you can do is give a right to reside. So I've got clients, they've got one of the children has moved back in with a parent to look after them, but they don't want that child to have a right to say, oh, well, I was dependent on the parent and I need to live here forevermore because it's now my home. So we just put a right to reside into the will to say that that child has the right to live there for a period of a year after the passing of the parent, so that they know it's very clear they've got a year, but then the property can be marketed during that time. But then that's it, and then the estate will be split however many ways.
Many people put off reviewing or thinking about a will because it means thinking about death. How do you help people get past that?
you get absolutely every different type of person. So I had a lady that cried the whole time, the whole appointment. She just cried through everything. And what she was crying for was the fact she wasn't going to see her sons again once she died. That was her reason for crying. And the will made her think about that. Some people are quite blasé and jokey and say, oh, yes, shoot my ashes up to space in a rocket, all sorts of things. But most people get that they do need to think about the planning and get it done. There's also a great sense of relief once somebody's sorted out their planning. And they're like, oh, I'm so pleased. I get that an awful lot. And I say to people, let's do it. Let's have the conversation. Let's get everything out in the open. Let's get you understanding it all. Let's get it all signed and sealed. And then you can forget about it and go and live your life. That's what you need to do. Concentrate on that. People say to me, why do you take so many mini breaks and holidays and things? I said, because life is for living. And I've seen it quite a lot this year. You know, it's a natural progression. Unfortunately, we are all going to pass away at some point. But some people don't get the opportunity to enjoy their retirement. I do bedside wills. That's a very sad thing. So somebody's left it right till the last minute, and then we're called in, usually by Macmillan or charity or a desperate relative, to get somebody's last wishes. So that's really, really sad, and we have to be very sensitive in those situations. What's even sadder is if we get there, we take the instruction, we will keep the office open 24/7 if we have to. If we've got an urgent case, we will do that to meet the client's needs. But sometimes, on a rare occasion, we don't get back to the hospital in time for that person to sign their will. And that's a horrible, horrible feeling, because you know you've done your utmost and you've rushed everything through, but that person left it to the last minute, but it really leaves a very sour taste. And that is upsetting. So that's what I would beg people, please don't be in that position. Please still think about these things.
How can families start those conversations?
I mean, there's a lot of media coverage about wills. Martin Lewis is great for telling people, do your powers of attorney, do this, do that. So you've got the avid Martin Lewis watchers, then that's a good one. People that have done will planning, just to say, I've just done my will. I didn't realise how important it was. I've sat down and chatted with this lady and I've learnt so much, but I now feel confident. The other thing I'd say is every year, I personally must spend between £1,500 and £2,000 at least on different insurance policies, because I buy travel insurance, I buy home insurance, contents, boiler insurance, pet insurance, car insurance, all those different things. And I don't think I've ever claimed on anything to do with my property, but I dread to think how many thousands of pounds I've spent over the years. But your will is an insurance policy to make sure that your family are looked after, or the ones you hold most dear, when you pass away. And that insurance policy, you don't have to pay for that every year and keep doing it. You can have a review meeting, and if there's nothing to be done, there's nothing to pay. So, yeah, it's the biggest insurance policy you can put in place, and it's at your discretion as to when you decide to put that in. And then I describe the powers of attorney as the insurance policies for before you pass away. So should you lose capacity, so it might be Alzheimer's, dementia, that kind of thing creeps up, or you've had a dreadful accident, you're in a coma, that kind of thing. It's where you've lost capacity. They look after you or appoint the people you want to look after you if you haven't got capacity at that point. So that's like your insurance policies before you die, to make sure only those you trust and hold most dear can look after your affairs. When you die, they die with you, and then your will comes into play. So it just switches over. So that's how to think of it. But you just do them when you want to and just keep reviewing. So that would be my advice there.
And I just want to reiterate again to the audience, because you provided some really great examples. What would happen if I decided, oh, I can't bother to do a power of attorney? I'm fighting fit. I don't need one. I don't need a will. That's for other people. I trust my family.
Okay, so your family, if you are deemed not to have capacity, and that's been documented, then they have no jurisdiction over your accounts. Even if you're married, you would think that your husband or wife would be able to get to your accounts. But if they're in your name, even if they're joint, they can still be frozen if somebody's deemed not to have capacity. So I can give you another example. I've had clients. So Bill is married to Janet. Janet has a brain tumour. She's currently receiving care in her own home, but she's bedridden, and the tumour has grown so large that she is losing her sight. The surgeons assessed her, but too dangerous to remove. The gentleman rang me because he couldn't access her bank account, and the bank had already advised him to put lasting power of attorney in place, but they didn't do it. When I visited the lady, she does sleep a lot, but she still had capacity. She could still tell me what she wanted to happen. But what happened was the husband was using his wife's bank card to access her pension money. He then lost his wallet and he didn't have internet access. And the bank have said, no, he can't have any access to her accounts because he is not her and she has not done the power of attorney, which would have given him permission. So that's an example of something that can happen. All he can do is apply for a retrospective application for deputyship. That's what it's called. And for that, you have to go to the Court of Protection. It costs over £2,000 to make the application, and it takes up to 9 months for the court to look at that case. And even then, if the courts don't think that he's capable and they think perhaps social services, which is effectively the government, can do a better job, they don't have to award him power of attorney at all. But in those 9 months, you can't do anything to help the person that you desperately want to help. And when I go out to see clients, if they haven't got capacity, I can't do power of attorney for them because they have to be able to tell me why they're doing it and be able to repeat back to me. So there's certain criteria that I have to follow. So people just leave it and leave it and leave it, and then it's too late. And the other thing, even when we're doing powers of attorney, it takes the government at least 12 weeks to process that. So there's still delays even when you're putting it in. So the best time to do power of attorney is when you're fit and healthy, you know who you trust to deal with things, and you just put them in place. They get registered and then forget about them because it's already done. It's already there. And there are two different types. One does property and finance. So it means that you can pay a gas bill for somebody, deal with HMRC, deal with their pensions, even sell their property if they couldn't remain there any longer. So all the financial aspects are covered there. You can have access to their bank account. You must only ever act in the benefit of that person and pay their usual things. You can't start treating yourself to meals out or filling your car with petrol. That is definitely not what it's about. It's about normal day-to-day life for the donor, which is the person who's applied for the lasting power of attorney. And then there's a different one, which is called health and welfare, and that is looking after somebody's healthcare. So it might be where they live if they couldn't remain at home anymore, what they had for dinner, what exercise they took, organising all of their outpatient appointments, so optical appointments, dental appointments, that kind of thing. Maybe somebody needs a knee replacement, but they don't know they need a knee replacement and their pain is managed with painkillers, and it would really confuse them if they were to have an operation. So you might say as the attorney, well, I think we'll stick with the painkiller route because it's less stressful for this person, and it's provided they're not suffering. So it's about getting involved in decisions like that. So that's what power of attorney does. Looks after you whilst you're alive in case something should happen. When you pass away, that dies with you, and then your will comes into play. And often your attorneys, they're the people who are looking after everything when you're alive are your trusted people and will then become your executors, or the people that sort out what happens in your will. And the trustees, they're the people who look after the trust fund that may have been created if you've had that type of will. So they're used to dealing with things before you've died, and then they're in control after you've died. So it just makes a nice, smooth transition.
So let's think about the digital world. So, because our lives are increasingly online, what should people remember about digital assets, be it online accounts and passwords?
Okay, so ideally, you should some people say, oh, I'm preparing my will book or my will file. It's a good idea to keep all of that stuff in one place and to let your executors, which may well be your children, know where everything is and keep it up to date. It's going to be a lot easier for them to find. When somebody passes away, we do have a clause in our wills which talks about digital assets, which allows the executors to deal with them, because there's things like Facebook accounts, we all have online banking, the whole world is online now. If you're dealing with a professional company, when probate happens, then everything will be checked in any case. And a solicitor or somebody like that can do a lot more searches for things to find out what somebody had, because they can actually look under every rock and stone to see if there were extra accounts or extra funds anywhere. The normal individual may not be able to access all of that because they might not, paperwork might have been lost, that sort of thing. But a solicitor can reach out and find all those sorts of things.
If someone listening to this episode today decides to do just one thing this week about their will or estate planning, what would you encourage them to do?
I would encourage them to book an appointment first off and just have that chat. We don't charge anything for a chat. We'll take somebody through it. If somebody's got a niggling concern or something they're worried about, people will often come to me and say, oh, my mum's done this, my dad's done that, I'm worried about my grandma, that kind of thing. But really what we need is a chat. And often family find it quite difficult within family because they don't like to be told what to do. But often I'll get clients that say, oh, well, I really want you to come see my mum and dad, but my dad's really difficult and, he might be a bit grumpy and he might not want to talk to you, that kind of stuff. As a professional, you normally find that people do respect what you say and they will listen to you, and then they will start to engage and ask questions. So that can happen. But it's just about explaining everything and re-explaining it until somebody understands it.
Yeah, I think it's about having that patience, and you carry a lot of patience with your clients. Yeah.
But I like people. I genuinely like people, and I like helping people. And if I come across a little old lady and she's got absolutely no money, but she's worried about her cat being looked after when she's, I'm not going to leave that lady without a will. I'm going to put something in place because I want everybody to have a will. We want people to not have those concerns, and we want their family to be looked after and for everything to be a lot easier. Because, like I say, when we pass away, it's a very emotional time, even though I deal with these things all the time. When I've had parents who pass away, when that happens, you are sort of in a bit of a fog and you're functioning. But if you asked me everything that happened around my mother's funeral, for instance, I could tell you bits of it, but I couldn't repeat everything that happened because you're just functioning. You're not necessarily concentrating like you normally would because you are affected by what's gone on. The other thing I encourage people to do, I ask people about their funeral wishes, and they might say, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But actually, it's quite good if you can have a little think about what you might want. And if you're somebody like me who has attended quite a few funerals, you tend to think, oh, I really like that piece of music, or that was a good idea, or oh, crikey, I don't want my funeral to be miserable like that. We supply a document just to write down, I'd like this piece of music, or I'd like that, or I'd like you all to go down the pub and have, a packet of crisps and a cucumber sandwich and half a lager. You can write what you want. But if you actually say, what you would like, it does bring quite a lot of comfort to those left behind, because they can say that, oh, I followed my mum or my dad's wishes. I've done what they wanted. And it sort of brings a little bit of peace at a very sad time that they followed your wishes.
Maria, I just want to thank you so much for informing us and sharing your advice. And thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome.
If you would like further details about Maria, then please follow links in the show notes.